Hi, so I'm Shahar, CISO at Dario, and I have a confession to make. I'm not a big fan of compliance, to be honest. I mean, it's too rigid, too strict. There's so many by-the-book stuff that we need to adhere to, and I'm not that kind of type, and it makes it very difficult for me. But that's why we decided to do this forum and this panel. So I had this penetration test the other day, and I wanted to take a nice group of people that I've been working with for a long time, and my compliance manager told me, why don't you take this US known brand to do this penetration test? It would make the customers very happy. So I told him, I don't want to. I want to work with these guys. I know them for years. They're very good. And he told me, it's not good. I mean, the customers want to see a known brand. So they did this test, and it was very generic, and they found this X option, whatever, cookie settings, and the other very lame findings. And then I understood that there is an issue. There may be a clash between compliance and security, because in the end, I didn't get a good security penetration test. And it didn't put my company in a better security position. On the other hand, customers were very happy, and they pay the bill. So it's a balance. Compliance-driven organizations, in some cases, want to check a box. Security-driven organizations are searching for risk-based approach in most cases. And there may be a clash. And this is what we're trying to understand in this forum. And that's why I've asked 4 of my best friends and top professionals in their domain to help me understand and find the right balance between compliance and security, and see if there is a clash. So without further ado, let's start with a short introduction. Iris?
Hi everyone, I'm Chen, Iris Chen in Hebrew. I'm the CISO of the First Information Bank of Israel. Let me say that risk and compliance are a part of my job, everyday job. I'm 20 years in this job in security, and thank you, Shahar, for inviting me. And hope in the end of this meeting we'll know the difference between compliance and risk, because it's not the same. So thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Inbar Ben-Tsion Regerman. I'm a manager at the UI Hactics Advanced Security Center in Israel, and I'm heading our privacy protection team. I'm also a CISO for a few years now, and this time I'm CISO of a very nice non-profit non-governmental organization called Allocate Israel. And in my spare time, I am managing a community of cybersecurity and privacy in an organization called ACC, the Association of Corporate Councils in Israel. And in my community, there are about 400 members, which are usually legal counsels, compliance officers, CIOs, and CISOs. So thank you very much, Shahar, for inviting me to be here. As you can imagine, compliance and security are quite a big part of my everyday.
Hi, I'm Dikla. I'm the CISO of AppsFlyer. First of all, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Shahar, for inviting me here. In my past, I've been to Edited Holdings, which, like Liran from Playtika, is a gambling company, so I know compliance very well, both from there and from AppsFlyer. And I do believe that although sometimes it's a challenge, it's a great opportunity for us in security to push forward the things that are risk-related and not just to check the box.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me here in this great panel, and I really want to say that I'm really proud to be in a 80% women representative panel, so thank you for that, Moshe and Shahar. Yeah, well deserved. My name is Naama Matarasso. I'm the security and compliance lead for Israel at Google Cloud. Before that, I was the executive director and co-founder of Privacy Israel, which was the first non-profit organization in Israel advocating and promoting privacy. So I will strongly advocate for compliance here, but also for security. I'm coming with a dual expertise and experience, and I really like about my background that I have the ability to combine my legal expertise. I'm also a lawyer specializing in internet law, and with my technical cybersecurity hands-on. So I would argue that compliance is important, no less than security.
Challenge accepted, and it looks like the right forum is here. So let's start the discussion. And Naama, let's start with you. How would you describe the difference between compliance and security to management? In many cases, they don't seem to understand the real difference.
Yeah, that's right, I think. And as Inbar mentioned earlier, it is indeed not the same thing, security and compliance. And I think that in order to understand better the difference between compliance and security, we first need to break down these terms and understand what is the purpose of compliance and what is the purpose of security. And in order to summarize it, I will say that compliance is the what we're going to do, what we are required to do, and security is the how we're going to implement it, how we're going to do that. So compliance is more about the security or legal or standards frameworks that we are committed to, and security provides us the leverage to implement what's important for us on top of this compliance requirements. So I think that compliance provides us a great base level of requirements, and on top of that we can do much better and we can go further and improve our security posture. And this is the way we should do that.
Iris, you seem to have a very interesting thing about that. I know because it's written.
I think differently. I think you need to expand the security versus compliance when you look at the map, the management risk map. When you look at the risk management map, you see the security risk and you see the compliance risk. The security risk is very, very simple to understand. I think all of us are security people, or most of us are security people here. And security risk, you need to, it comes from the business risk. You need to secure the organization, you need to secure the resources, the data, etc. And when you look at the compliance risk, it's very, very simple. It's legal. It's legal and obligation, regulatory. And it's not a security minded. And the difference between them, it's very, very, sometimes it's very, very hard to explain the management, okay? Because in my line of work, which is in banking, you have a very highly regulated sector. So most of our doings are regulations, okay? We are mostly compliance. But we don't have to only stay compliance, we need to do more. We don't have to just check the box, we need to do more and to be secure. It's another differently risk.
Okay, so for me, compliance is being compliant with the regulations, like Naama said, compliance with the standard that we decided to apply to our company. When we are compliant, we have like a line of either the regulation or the standard that we want to adhere to, and we follow that line, or we try to follow that line as best we can. Whereas security is about being secure in a material way. We want to be secure in our operations, we want to be secure in our product, we want to be secure in the way that we manage our business, we want to be secure in the way that we handle our clients and the way that we handle our supply chain. We want to be secure materially. So they are, compliance for me, it's a little bit like a risk in and of itself. And the way that we can handle it is either by adhering to that line that somebody outside of our organization decided for us, or we go the extra mile and decide to be secure on top of it. Also, compliance is not just in cybersecurity, just so you know that compliance is in securities like how do you say, like traded securities, and you have compliance in privacy, you have compliance in AML, you have compliance in KYC, you have compliance in ABC, which is anti-bribery and corruption, and other parts of the business which are not related to cybersecurity in a direct way. So, yeah.
I would also want to add, thank you, sorry, that compliance is a bundle of things, and I think security, compliance, privacy, risk management are all coming together, and we all need to consider them not separately, but in a comprehensive way. And it's also important to remember that compliance is not seen as security, and security is not seen as compliance, in a manner that organizations that are fully compliant with standards, certificates, regulation, does not necessarily mean that they are secure, and the opposite as well. So organizations that they are fully secure does not necessarily mean that they are fully compliant. And we saw many examples of organizations that were fully compliant with the regulation and suffered from data breaches and security incidents. So we need to understand how we can leverage security for compliance and leverage compliance for security for the benefit of the business, and to align these two fields together.
Okay, so I want to go back to this point of checking a box, as this wise and grumpy CISO once said. How do we verify that we don't simply check a box?
Checking a box, wow, it's a phrase. So what do we mean checking a box? Compliance is checking a box? Okay, it is. But when you look at the risk mitigation, the company needs to do both. If the company wants to be compliant because they had regulators and they had customers, and etc., it needs to follow the rules and go compliant. But when you do more than compliant, you are very secured. So if you want to address the overall risks that the company and the organization needs to address, you have to address the compliance risk and the security risk. Sometimes they align. If you align the security measures with the compliance requirements, you did the job well.
Okay, so before I transitioned into cybersecurity, I used to be a lawyer for 20 years and compliance manager. So for me, compliance is just another risk. That's the way I look at it. It's a corporate risk, the risk of not being compliant with the regulation or the standard that we chose. So this is one of the main problems for either checking a box or being actually secure is something that we see on many organizations in the way that compliance is usually handled by lawyers and compliance officers and accountants, and security is usually handled by security professionals and IT professionals. And they're looking at things in a different way. They're looking at things in a way of either being aligned with a standard or with a regulation and a yes or no question, whether we are or we are not compliant. Is it black or white? Whereas in security, we are used to look at risks, and there is like a full range of either we accept the risk or we do not accept the risk, and everything in between. How do we mitigate the risk and what are we doing with that? And for me, just checking a box is looking at things in a black and white way, and it's not the right way. You should look at it as another risk.
Cool. So now for the complementary AI question of each and every panel. With all this AI around, and I'm sure there's a huge pressure from the business to start using AIs and start experimenting. How do you do it? How do you fit into your compliance framework, which is way, way back in most cases? And how do you do it properly?
So I think AI is a really big word and we all like to use it. But when you try to divide, what is it? So there's a few questions that we have to ask ourselves. what are we talking about? Are we talking about using an external module? Are we talking about using something internal? Are we talking about using AI capability inside a product that we already own? What's the risk? What data is involved here? Who should have access to this data? Is the risk data leakage? Is it intellectual property or something like that? Is it copyright? So it's something that's very, very big, and like we do always, threat modeling. What is the thing that we're trying to protect here? What are the things that we fear from here? And once you have that, and you have the technical solution that implements the AI, you understand what's the real risk. You understand what are the things that you need to do, what controls do you need to take in order to make sure that you secure what needs to be secured and you still meet compliance. And compliance is a really important issue here because specifically in cloud companies and in SaaS provider, this is something that we have to meet. This is something that we have to obey. And it's something that's very, very easy to forget. When you look at this high-powered, amazing AI, let's do AI here, let's do AI there. But go back to basics. Let the dust fall down. Understand what's the right solution and how you make sure that you still meet compliance and you still being an enabler for the company. I think that a few months back, it was really, really hard to do. The hype was really high. There were no solutions or clear guidelines of what should be done. Now we're in a complete different zone, and I do believe that AI will obviously be more and more in compliance and be more and more secure. And it really depends on how you do it.
Naama, you come from AI...
AI first company, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's highly important that AI will comply with all the risks and regulations that we complying in other worlds. And in general, I think that AI is just one example of the friction between business and compliance. And I think that the reason for this friction usually is because many business stakeholders might think, not everyone, but some of them might think that compliance is something that is not a business driven. They might think that it's something that needs to be done in the background by the compliance professionals, and it's not for them to engage in it. And I think this is the point to where we need to change the perception of compliance, and it's on us to do that. So if, for example, the business wants to use an AI service that is not in compliance with our compliance regime, it's on us to say, of course, that it's not in compliance, but you know that usually when you say something it's not in compliance, no one is interested to hear about it. And instead, from my experience, I try to keep the compliance conversation as short as possible and convert the compliance objectives into business objectives and explain the risk and explain what are the business risks and how we can lose trust with our customers, with regulators, with how the reputation of our company can be affected in using in compliance services. So this, I think, it's on us to create better and healthier connection and conversation with the business in order to explain the risk and just take them with us on this trip.
Cool, thank you very much. Very, very interesting so far. And I want to ask you
May I add about that?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Thanks. So I think the business approach that Naama just talked about is very, very important. So what we really need to do in order to do that, as CISOs and compliance managers, we need to conduct sort of a mini BIA, business impact assessment, or what we call in privacy compliance, we call it DPIA or PIA, data protection impact assessment or privacy impact assessment. You may hear those terms discussed with regards to GDPR, CCPA, and other regulations around the world. We actually go and investigate the company and the users of AI because they are very different uses. We have AI used in products, as we heard in the former panel of DevOps. We have AI used in the corporate environment, in IT, with customers, with the chain of supply chain, and everywhere. So everybody is using it already. They're not waiting for us, and they want to use it like yesterday, right? So we need to apply to comply with that. We need to allow that. We want to enable the business to work, and we want to enable the business to operate as best they can. And AI allows them to do that, but we need to manage the risks. In order to manage the risk, we need to understand the risks. We need to understand the users. We need to understand what are they doing, where are they using it, what are the tools, what are the legal terms. We need to converse with legal. What are the IP risks, the RIP risks? What are the security risks, which are either technological risks or operational risks? We can have security risks in the way that we manage the business, in the way we can have security risks in the way that we manage the user's access to AI, the user's actual use of the AI, which AI tool is better for our company in order to mitigate those risks. And then we need to decide, what are the controls that we want to apply? Are they the technological controls? Are there organizational controls? And with all of that, we need to approach the business people, and this is their decision, because everything, all of that, costs money. All controls that we apply, either organizational or technological, they cost money eventually. And the management needs to decide whether to accept the risk, mitigate the risk, and invest the money, or drop the risk and drop the use altogether.
Cool. Cool. Thank you very much. I want to ask you an honest question. All of you can answer, people from the crowd. With this fear-based approach of compliance, you often get more budgets. Do you leverage that? Or I wouldn't say abuse.
Okay, the answer is yes. Yes, compliance get the money, okay? But also it's only for compliance, so it's not always aligned altogether. When you want to put the security risk inside the compliance, so it's easy, you do it, and therefore you have the money only for that. And you need to have to prioritize your risk in order to put more budget on your risk that you're managing. So the company, the organization needs to align both risks, as I said before, and they need to put money to budget on both of the risk, okay? So compliance is not always aligned with security, as I said. Security sometimes is getting into more details and getting into more observations and not trusting the compliance. So when someone says to me, when a cloud-based supplier said to me, I have SOC 2, okay, so I won't be doing PT, I will be, yeah? So, and not only PT, and not only the things that I wanted to do, and I wanted to monitoring, and this is all cost money, but it has SOC 2, so why do I have to do that and more? So it's very, very difficult to explain the organization management, why do I need to do more when they're focusing on compliance. But when we are working in a bank, so you need to know that the bank takes very seriously the security risk, and it's not only the budget point of view, but the mitigating the risk. So nobody wants to be complied but hacked. No banks in Israel or over the world wants to be complied by hacked. And no company, Google included, wants to be compliant but hacked. So this is the difference.
Anyone else wants to revert?
So I think an incident materializes the risk. It's not only in our imagination that something like that can happen, that someone can hack into our infrastructure and do ransomware or anything else. This is something that's practical. This is happening. And once you understand that, it changes things. I can tell you that on myself, the first time that we used the red team in one of my previous roles, and I had that print screen sent to me of our internal database with a simple select, my heart dropped down. This was, although it was a red team, this was a feeling I will not forget. And when the risk materialized, not just for security people, when the risk materialized for management, when the risk materialized for a developer that just put something in production that jeopardized the production, it creates an impact. And yes, we as security take advantage of that impact. And it's exactly the same in regards to compliance. Because in compliance, whether it's something that is PCI related or SOC 2, that has a huge effect on the business. Whether it's something that's coming from a partner, that comes from a major B2B customer that you have. This is something that's very, very business related, that have huge impact, and we have to take advantage of that. So I don't see it as fear-based. We deal with insurance. That's what we do in cyber. We want to make sure that we
want to sleep at night.
Share the risk.
Exactly. And when you see the impact, or when you feel the impact, that's when you understand. Because if you ask someone, hey, do you want to invest in lethal diseases insurance? I know that when I went to my insurance manager, he told me, listen, this is super important, this is very, very critical, you have to put money on that. And I was like, okay. And then I talked to someone that something happened to him, and he said, this is super critical. Because once it materialized, then you get it. This is how we act as humans.
Take advantage.
Cool. I hope your bosses are not here. Next, I want to stay with you, Dikla, and ask you about this statement I've made about the penetration test. And it's true that from compliance point of view, it may be sufficient to perform a penetration test with always top 10 and that's it. But it's not always enough from security perspective. And we want to sleep at night as much as possible, of course. How do you see that? How do you still get what you want from a penetration test?
So first of all, penetration test is not the only boundary that we have. We have other things and other controls that we put in place, whether it's bug bounty program, whether it's threat modeling inside the development process, or other activities that we're doing. But yes, definitely, as a company that's B2B, we need to have a penetration test, and it has to be conducted by an external vendor to make sure that it's unbiased and it makes a lot of sense. The easiest way will be just to use something that you will know what the outcome will be, and you will have your clean slate and everything will be okay. But as you said, it's kind of pointless. So we need to plan ahead, and you have to make sure that you do use the company that you want to use, or you do have the ability to choose in between companies that are doing a fine job, and make sure that you plan ahead and have time to remediate. Because when you're doing it with a good company, they will find things, and you have time to remediate, and then by the retest, you will have a clean slate. It doesn't always work. In the past, I got to deal with a regulator that had really specific requirement and forced us to work with a company where we had to invest a lot of logistical effort in order to just to work with them, because we weren't familiar with working with them, and they were from afar. And I have to admit, it wasn't as good as we wished. So sometimes you have to take, forgot the word, I'm sorry.
You can say it in Hebrew, everybody. We understand.
You have to give up on some things. But then make sure that in your red team activity, you take whoever you want to choose. And you just navigate between all those.
Anyone else?
As a CISO, I'm trying to let me say that you have to trust but verify. What does it mean? Always, we are trying to, the PT in our bank is very professional, red team, whatever. But now, when we have to use suppliers, does the leverage of these suppliers supposed to hurt us? So the supplier said to me, I have a PT, you can trust us. Should I trust him? No, the answer is no. I should verify. How do you verify? Do you do the PT all over again? The answer is no, because what you want to do is trust, but verify, you have to put very much effort in supervising and verifying how you do it. You want to know the name of the company, you know your company is the PT and red team, and you want to know what company does it use for start. You want to know what are the security risks that the PT has had to offer. And moreover, you have to know what are the mitigation that were made. As have they had any security, high security breaches in the last year, and you need to verify and verify and verify. So you really trust your suppliers, but you want to know that they're very, very secured as well.
Thank you. Naama, what do we CISOs and engineers are often misunderstand about compliance? I'm not taking myself as an example. I do want to understand. What do we misunderstand? What are we missing?
Yeah, but I think it's a good question because I will relate to what you said in the beginning of this panel about having to do PT that you didn't want to do because the compliance required you to do it by a specific firm. So I think this is where some CISOs can mistake, I think, and think of the role as more technical in such that they need to manage the security team, the security system. But as I said before, I think that the CISO needs also to overlook compliance, risk management, privacy, and security, even though it's not their main role. And in terms of PT, if the compliance, for example, require that we will perform penetration tests, I think this is where the CISO can require the scope of the PT, which firm will do it, on which systems it will apply it. So I think this is, again, a place where we can work together and not work against each other. And in terms of engineering, it's completely different because engineering do not need to understand compliance. It's not their job. They need to know how to maybe write secure code, but they are not security professionals. So we need, it's our job to export and present better compliance metrics and compliance gaps to engineering in order to provide a better compliance posture to engineering on what are the specific feature or the specific products that need to mitigate specific risks. And if we are doing this properly, I think we can go ahead and go to the next level and start talking about policy as code. And this is where the place where the compliance and the engineering work very well together, because policy can dictate the policy that we need to implement, and engineering will demonstrate and implement the environment to do so. So I don't think that engineering have mistakes about compliance, but CISOs might have some mistakes, I guess.
Inbar, let's talk about politics.
Politics?
Politics,
Ooh.
Yeah. What do you think, or where do you think should the compliance team sit, or should it? Do you think they should report to the security team? Vice versa, should it be a different department?
So you dive into deep politics. Okay, so in my view, I think that the cooperation must be achieved in the way that this is structured. So we need to structure the compliance and security organizations with the mind of full cooperation between them, because they cannot operate in and of themselves without the other. We heard here from Sharon in the panel in the morning that she put the IT under the CISO, right, under the security. This is very interesting to me. I like the idea very much, not only because I'm a CISO, but also in terms of the cooperation that I'm talking about. This needs to...
That's a lot of hassle to manage the IT.
Right.
Tickets,
I have a friend who sits here in the audience who did that too. He used to be a CISO, and then he became a CIO from that. And this is a very good transition. I really liked it, Balak. Yeah. And I think this is this cooperation between the stakeholders in compliance and IT and security is a must. And the where it sits, it doesn't really matter as long as there is no conflict of interests, which is inherent between security and legal and compliance and IT. So we have inherent conflict of interest in allocation of resources. We have inherent conflict of interest in the way that IT and compliance think about the way that they need to comply with the standards, comply with the regulations, provide available IT infrastructure and IT applications to the organization, and the security part of it. And in order to avoid that conflict of interest, which is inherent to the roles and does not at all relate to anybody in person in those roles and as a stakeholder, we need to have like a referee. Maybe it will be chief operations, maybe it will be chief legal, maybe it will be chief finance, maybe it will be the CEO. But we need to have, or maybe we have security.
Question? Yeah. Oh. Yeah, sure. No, okay. Okay.
Sure. That's fine. So basically we need to have a referee. Yeah. So yes, I agree with you that the conflict of interest between compliance and security is not as fierce as the conflict of interest between security and IT, of course. But then there is still a matter of resource allocation and a matter of decision whether we will follow just the line, we toe the line, or we go a little bit further and be actually secure. This is where I see the conflict of interest. And this needs to be decided by the management, not by the chief compliance or the chief security. This needs to be decided by the top management of the company. What is the strategy that we will follow? And if there are conflicts of resource allocation and other ways that I spoke about before, then they would need to decide how to assume the risk or manage the risk. Okay, so we have one time for last question, and I want to ask you something that bothers me. I can just start with terms like clean desk or visitor log or stuff like that. So in many cases, standards and regulations are way behind. They're not relevant anymore. Fighting with an auditor about whether an SSO is enough or we still need to change the password. What do you do with that? How do you react to that as security professionals, not as from compliance point of view?
The fun with security. Yes, there is fun. The fun with security, you can do whatever you want. You're not compliant. You don't need compliance. So the fun with security, you can do up to date your measures, up to date your procedures, up to date your guidelines. But compliance can be up to date in 2 years. So now you're stuck with a regulation which is 2 years old, or 10 in the banking area. Or 40 in the case of privacy, right? So what do? You stay secure. You don't have to just comply. This is the difference between compliance and security. And this is the emphasis of it. You said it very, very well. You need to put, you cannot, in banking, you need to secure your connection with your customers. And the regulations talked about facts. Who does facts anymore? So you cannot stay only compliant, you need to stay up to date with the risk, and you need to stay up to date with the risk mitigations, and then that's it.
Amazing. Naama?
I just want to add that once there is very outdated regulation, such as the Privacy Protection Act in Israel, it provides us room for self-regulation, and self-regulation is really good for security professionals because they have to insert their statement and their strategy into practice instead of compliance, and this is where the place that they can actually make an impact.
Okay, final words, Dikla.
I think this is our place as security professionals to create conversation with the auditor. What's the risk? What's the reason? What are we trying to protect here? And this is how we're protecting it with other measures or with additional measures on top of the old measures in hand.
Okay, so thank you very much. I see that people are very tired, need to digest it. So thank you for having this panel.